Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. Once in a while we have a problem with customer service on TCGplayer or eBay, and TCGplayer is a lot better platform for sellers than eBay is in terms of actually getting in touch with a human to get something resolved, and in terms of their willingness to just work with you and be reasonable. On eBay, it's not that they are more unreasonable on eBay, but also it's just nearly impossible to get a human to actually listen to what you need to tell them to resolve an issue. But I'm going to give you a little bit of what I've learned over the years dealing with this kind of stuff, and specifically one recent incident that I'm going to use to just kind of exemplify how you need to do things. Now, there's a seller who I am helping sell a bunch of Pokemon stuff, and of course he sold 10 copies of this old Eevee WotC promo. Now, this is from the old WotC days when WotC was printing Pokemon cards, and this was not a card that was in a regular set or anything. It is specifically a promo card. And these old WotC era foils are known to peel. The construction quality of them is very poor, and if you were to attempt, you could just peel the foil layer right off the card, because the way the paper for this is constructed is you have the cardboard and then you have a foil layer on top of that, and then they print the card on top of the foil layer. And so the adhesion between the foil layer and the cards was not good. It's a well-known problem with WotC era foils, with specifically WotC era promo foils, and even more specifically with this exact card, because this card was some kind of store promo where stores at the time would get bricks of them to give out to players for coming to events and things like that. And so a gentleman on TCGplayer, he bought 10 copies from us, and I use us as me and the person who I am assisting with this, and I help them with their customer service issues. And so I get a message on TCGplayer. Now, it is not a negative feedback. It was just a message from the buyer. And the gentleman says, "So I received 10x WotC EV promos from your shop, and one of my buyers at my pop-up store confirmed one of them were a fake through a rip." One of them were a fake through a rip. I'm about to check the others, but not sure if you guys had a screener for this. Okay, so, maybe your pop-up Pokemon store is a nexus of Pokemon authentication experts. Maybe it is. Likely not, but maybe it is. And so when one of your customers comes through and he says that he thinks you have some inauthentic inventory in your possession, just imagine you're a seller in any type of industry where authentication matters, and you have a customer come and say, "Sir, I believe some of your inventory you're selling is inauthentic." Here's a piece of advice. You might call it a life hack if you're one of the younger people in the audience. Don't start destroying your inventory just on the word of a person at your pop-up store. Okay? First piece of advice, don't start destroying your inventory. Maybe do what I did when I first read this message and spend 15 seconds searching Google. Just try some Google searches, see where that leads you, see if you can learn something, see if that might lead you to some better Google searches, and figure out what's going on. So I didn't catch his message, and 30 minutes later he says, "I just did the rip test on multiple and can provide proof these cards are 100% fake. Holofoil peel clean off." Holofoil peel clean off. Okay. Here's the problem now. The buyer has gone and destroyed the cards. And so now they are emotionally committed to this. Because if it turns out that you simply send them a link to any of a number of threads that are easily found through Google searches that show that old WotC era foils peel easily, that WotC era promos especially peel easily, and that this specific Eevee WotC era promo foil has a history of peeling easily, they're not gonna back down, okay? Because they've cornered themselves in a spot where now they've destroyed their property. And so they must, in order to be made whole, continue to believe and continue to argue whether or not they genuinely believe it, that the cards were fake. So there is nothing you can do at this point that will get them to back down. And you have to understand that when you have a customer service problem, if the customer has turned this into an emotional issue, if they're no longer acting rationally, if they're no longer open to reason, there is nothing you can do to convince them. Okay? And so by the time I first see that this is even an issue, he's got those 2 messages to me and he's already destroyed his cards because a customer at his pop-up store said they were fake. Okay. So I respond to him. This is my first communication back to him. And I said, I'll escalate it to TCGplayer and we'll see what they want to do. I've sold 13 other copies of this card to 11 other people, and you're the first person claiming they're fake. I know in some cases TCGplayer wants the card sent to them. Let's see what they want us to do. So, I'm not claiming, hey, the cards are legit. I'm not claiming, oh, I knew they were fake and I was just trying to sell them to you guys. I'm saying, hey, I've sold 13 other copies to 11 other people and you're the first person, and thus this is a surprise to me that you think they are fake. And as I was typing the message, I was thinking, what am I supposed to do here? And I had some kind of recollection that in cases where there's accusations of fake cards, TCGplayer wants you to send them the cards or something like that, but I couldn't quite remember specifically. So I told him, I think they might want us to send them the cards. We'll find out. I'll escalate it. And so essentially, I'm not putting my foot down. I'm not accusing anyone of being right or wrong in this situation. I'm just saying, hey, let's see what TCGplayer wants us to do. Okay? And so I go ahead and I just escalate it to TCGplayer, which on the seller side, when you've got messages, there's just a button right there and it says escalate. And then you can type a message to an employee at TCGplayer that they'll read and they'll help you resolve the issue. So they'll step in and they'll help you. Okay. And the gentleman responds, yep, no issue. If you would like videos from the mall, I've got every single one and willing to send photos into TCG. Just wanted to see your perspective before it was escalated. And that's reasonable. It sounds like the gentleman was okay with it being escalated and that, like he's maybe not flying off the cuff. He still thinks they're fake. He's got videos. That's good. I mean, at least when he was doing the destruction of his property, he recorded it. So, and so I respond to him and I say, it's no problem. We'll get it figured out. Which, is, I would like to think, is about the most non-confrontational thing I could possibly say. Because look, I've already escalated it to TCGplayer. I have no reason to think the cards are fake. I've handled these a ton. I pulled out the stack of them that I've got, which is about 30, 40 more of them, something like that. And I felt a bunch of them. The paper feels fine. I am certainly no expert on Pokemon authentication, especially not 25-year-old WotC era foil promos. But, I did a little bit of Google searching, and what I found after 5 minutes of Google searching was a bunch of photos of these with the foil layer ripped off. And people saying, yes, this is a common issue with those cards, those foils, promos from that era. Specifically, this Eevee promo is known to have the problem. And so I found multiple threads on Reddit, on one of the other Pokemon sites where people talk about, authentication and stuff. Multiple threads from multiple different periods of time of people talking specifically about this kind of stuff and just saying, yes, that stuff peels like that. They're real cards, and that's how they peel, because the quality control was shit, and WotC was making them and didn't care. So I've escalated it. I've told the guy, I've said, we'll get it figured out. He messages me back, and he says, also, do you have your buyer list for all those EVs? If not, I'm going to just go through all the reviewers on your review list to ensure no one in this community is getting scammed. Okay, so there's not a way for a buyer on TCGplayer to see and communicate with people you've sold to. and especially not to know specifically what you have sold to them in order for them to narrow down potentially everyone who bought this card from the person I'm working with, and to help those specific people know that they're getting scammed. So he sends that, and I didn't respond to it because, again, I've escalated the thing. There's nothing else I can do. And you have to understand this point when you're in a customer service problem. If you've escalated it to TCGplayer, to eBay, to whatever, you need to just stop communicating with the person you're dealing with, because it's not going to solve anything. You know, I like to watch like badge cam videos of police arresting people, and it's unbelievable to me that police will sit and argue with a person who's already in handcuffs in the back of the squad car, under arrest, driving to the jail. It's like, what is this emotional energy going to solve for you? You know, but people do that. That's how humans are. We just like to argue with each other, especially when we get our egos wrapped up into it, which a lot of the time, if someone thinks they've been scammed on one of these platforms, immediately they get overly emotional about it. Their ego gets wrapped up into it. So then I see a few minutes later, I get a message through TCGplayer, and it says, hey, a customer had a negative experience. So now he's actually gone and he's clicked the feedback and he's clicked 1 star, and he's left a feedback on the account, and it says, seller sold fake cards. If you've bought WotC EV promos, I suggest checking. Allowed seller to do right by their side, but they chose to take the route of escalating it to TCG for a longer process versus verifying through proof. Photo reference for fakes that sellers didn't care to see, and he left a link to Imager where he shows a picture of an EV card ripped, and yes, it looks exactly like all the other peeled off foil layer EV promo cards that you found if you had done 1 to 2 minutes of research on Google. So yeah, I'm not going to say it confirmed to me that the cards were legit, but it definitely backed it up that the cards he destroyed looked exactly like the other cards you could find on Reddit, on other sites that were the same card, the same types of promos from the WotC era, the same foils, all peeled in the same way, which they're well known to have done. Okay, but here's the thing. He's gone and escalated. He's, after saying, hey, let's see, what did he actually say? Yep, no issue. Before, he had said, yep, no issue. Now he'd flown off the cuff, left a negative feedback, and said basically, I gave them the opportunity to do right, but they chose to take the route of escalating to TCG for a longer process. Now, come on. If you're escalating to TCG for a longer process, first off, if you're in the wrong as a seller on TCG, they absolutely will nail you. And I've had interactions with bad sellers where I've been the buyer and the seller has been 100% wrong. And yeah, TCGplayer nails them and refunds your money and fixes things. So you're not going to gain anything by dragging out the process as a seller if you're wrong. Now, if you're showing good faith, if you're actually trying to get a resolution for this and you're escalating because you want TCGplayer to step in because you and the buyer are not going to see eye to eye on this, then yes, you must escalate. So it shows bad faith to say that, oh yes, I gave them the chance to do right, which was what? Just say, oh yeah, these cards were definitely fake. Here's all your money back for the cards you destroyed. And blaming me essentially for escalating it to TCG. So, okay, so then what happens? Well, sadly, when somebody takes cards and they claim that they are fake and they complain to TCGplayer about it, TCGplayer essentially buys those cards from the person complaining. Okay, so it doesn't matter if the person is right or wrong. TCGplayer makes them whole by just buying the cards off of them and sends them a envelope with a shipping label to send the cards to TCGplayer to be evaluated. So I assume the guy sends the cards to TCGplayer, and lo and behold, after a few weeks, TCGplayer says, oh yeah, the cards were legit. Well, no shit. You know, you could have done 20, 30 seconds of Google searching like I did, and I sent all those links to TCGplayer showing them, hey, this is a known issue with cards from this era, these types of cards, this specific card. And yeah, the cards were legit after all. The point is, you have to deal with this unemotionally. And the people you're dealing with are going to believe that everyone is acting in bad faith. And it's really interesting because I know I'll get a bunch of comments on this video from people who may not know me from having watched my channel for a long time. And so they'll probably come in and they'll leave comments and they'll say things like, yeah, well, you know, all the sellers are always trying to rip us off and all these things. And they're always trying to pass off, you know, damaged cards as near mint. And they're always doing this and doing that. And I will not say that every seller on TCGplayer is great. Like I've said, I've had interactions with terrible sellers who sold me bent, inked, torn cards as near mint. Okay. I've had that happen to me on there. So yes, I know there are bad sellers on there, but anybody with a bit of sense as a businessman on TCGplayer is not screwing around like that. We want to make sales and we want them to stay made. And that's a term in kind of the business world, you know, stay sold. You want to sell something and you want it to stay sold because customers can bring things back. Customers can cancel contracts. Customers can decline to keep using your service. They can go and find someone else for whatever business you're providing. And you need to stay sold. And that's what smart business people do. And so the people with a lick of sense on TCGplayer as sellers, they're not over conditioning cards and claiming that they're bent in half, chewed up, slobbered on copies of whatever card are near mint. They're trying to grade, honestly, they're trying to sell the card, and any customer service problem is not worth its time. Okay? You know, this nonsense, this cost me a bunch of time. I had to spend probably an hour or more, you know, doing some Google searches, typing responses to this guy, and, you know, escalating to TCGplayer, typing essentially laying out my case to them on all the links from the research I did. You know, I lost about an hour of my life for that, and it did not make me one extra cent. And so anybody with half a bit of sense selling on any of these platforms is trying to avoid every customer service issue possible by running their business on the straight and narrow as well as they can. And so I know that some buyers think that every seller out there is just a scumbag who's trying to rip them off all the time. But the reality is, no, not really. So if you're on the seller side and you're dealing with people who believe they've been wronged, understand that the vast majority of the time, they're not going to be patient. They're not going to act in good faith. And in a crazy case like this, where somebody goes off and simply destroys the cards, you're especially not going to get good faith seeking of actual truth out of them. They're not going to be open to the idea that, oh, you know, maybe this is just a known problem. And if I did 30 seconds of Google searching, I could have found that out. So like I said, sadly, TCGplayer stepped in and made this guy whole financially after he ripped all his cards up. I wish I could say that hopefully the gentleman will take something away from this. My big takeaway would be if somebody walks up to your Pokemon pop-up store and tells you your inventory is fake, don't respond by starting to rip your cards in half. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon, and folks who will just rip their inventory in half because a random dude tells them it's fake. Thanks to those people, too. Good night, everyone.